The light. Oh God, the light. It wasn't like anything I'd ever seen. Not sunlight, not starlight, not even that blinding glare when you look at a welder's arc. It was it was a feeling more than a color. It felt like warm honey, thick and slow, cascading over me, through me. And the blue, not sky blue, not ocean blue. This was a blue so deep, so impossibly vibrant, it felt like it was singing. And gold. Not shiny, gaudy gold. This was a shimmering, molten gold that seemed to breathe. I was floating, not in water, not in air, just suspended. And there was music, so faint, like a music box you hear from 100 yards away, but it filled everything. It was the sweetest, saddest, most beautiful sound I've ever heard. I felt whole, like every atom of me was finally where it belonged. There was no pain, no fear, not even a whisper of regret, just this overwhelming sense of acceptance. Like I'd been searching for something my whole life, and here it was. Complete, utter, beautiful acceptance. It was like coming home, but a home I never knew I'd lost. I saw something then. A memory? It wasn't like watching a movie. It was more like being there. My little girl, Sophia. She was so small, her hair all wispy, wearing those ridiculous little pink shorts with the ruffles. She was on her bike, a bright red Schwinn, wobbling like crazy. And me, I was running alongside her, my hand on the back of her seat. I remember the sweat on my brow, the gravel digging into my sneakers. I remember the sheer terror in her eyes, then the flicker of determination. And then the wobble stopped. She was pedaling, really pedaling, on her own. Her laugh, it was like little bells. And I just stood there, my heart pounding, watching her go. It was so pure, so perfect. It's funny, the things that stick with you, right? The big arguments, the harsh words, they just fade. But that moment, that laugh, it felt like it was happening right now. What were you thinking in that moment, seeing her so free? I wasn't thinking. Not really. I was just being, soaking it all in. The warmth, the light, the music, and the acceptance. It was like the universe was whispering, it's okay, you're okay. It wasn't a judgment, it wasn't a reward. It was just truth. Raw, beautiful truth. I wanted to stay there forever. And then I was in the hospital. Yeah, so that was it. The light, the memory. And then snap. Back to the cold, sterile air of an operating room. The beeping of machines that suddenly sounded like a frantic alarm. The feeling of being yanked back, hard from someplace else. My name is Isabella Rossi. Izzy, most people call me. I'm 68 years old. And for the last 40 years, my life has been all about bringing forgotten things back to life. I restore carousel horses. You know, those beautiful antique wooden ones? The ones with the glass eyes and the ornate saddles? Yeah, those. It's painstaking work. Sanding down decades of grime, meticulously painting every feather on a griffin's wing, reattaching a chipped ear with the precision of a surgeon. I guess you could say I'm a perfectionist. It's a curse, mostly. A blessing, too, maybe, but mostly a curse. My mornings, well, they used to start with a ritual. Not coffee. No, I was never a big coffee drinker. It was tea. A strong Earl Grey, steeping for exactly 4 minutes. I'd sit at my kitchen table, the one with the chipped formica top, and watch the steam curl up. It was a quiet time, a chance to settle before the day's demands started, before the dust motes started dancing in the sunlight that hit my workshop. And what did I think about? Mostly the work. The next horse waiting on the stand. Did I choose the right shade of gold for this bridle? Is this swirl of paint on the mane flowing correctly? And then, creeping in, the worry. Always a worry. That I'd miss something. A tiny crack. A weak joint. That I wouldn't be good enough, even after all these years. It's funny, isn't it? You spend your life trying to make things perfect, and all you can ever think about is your own imperfections. As for faith, well, I was raised Catholic, went to catechism, confession every Saturday, but somewhere along the line, it all just faded. I didn't believe in anything I couldn't touch. Not really. Not the saints, not the miracles. I believed in hard work. I believed in wood grain. I believed in the smooth finish of a perfectly restored leg. Anything else felt theoretical, like trying to hold on to smoke. And family, that's a complicated one. I have a daughter, Sophia. She's all grown up now with a family of her own. We used to be close, really close. But things happened. A silly argument, really, over nothing. A Thanksgiving dinner years ago. I said something. She took it the wrong way. I dug my heels in. We just stopped talking, like a door slammed shut. It's been years. Too many years. And that silence, that estrangement, that was a constant ache, a dull throb beneath the surface of everything. Just last week before all this happened, I was working on a unicorn, a beautiful old thing, missing its horn. I'd spent hours carving a new one, trying to match the original style. And as I was about to glue it in place, I dropped it. Just a small slip of the wrist. It landed on the concrete floor of my workshop with a dull thud. Didn't break, thank God. But it rolled under a workbench into a dark corner I rarely go into. I just sighed and left it there. I'll get it later, I told myself. Later never came. What was it like coming back to your body? It was like being forced into a suit that was too tight, too scratchy, the weight of it, the limitations, the beeping. Oh, the beeping. It was so loud, so jarring. The last thing I remembered was that feeling of pure, unadulterated peace. And then the world came crashing back in. The pain, the confusion, the nurses bustling, and the overwhelming, crushing reality of being back. Looking back now, I can see it. Little cracks in the facade, little whispers I completely ignored. I was scheduled for this routine procedure. Nothing major, just a checkup, really. But the week leading up to it, my hands felt clumsy. Not just with the restoration work, though that was bad enough. I remember I was polishing a brass railing on a carousel horse, a really intricate one with these tiny carved roses, and I swear I dropped the polishing cloth about 5 times. 5. It kept slipping right out of my grasp. I just thought, Izzy, you're losing it. You're getting old. Your grip's not what it used to be. I'd blame it on being tired. Always tired. That was my go-to excuse for everything lately. And then there was the music. For days, it felt like there was this faint, tinny music playing in the background of my mind, like a distant music box, the kind you'd find in an antique shop. I'd stop what I was doing, trying to pinpoint the source, but it was just there, in my head. I'd shake my head, thinking I was hearing things. Stress, I told myself. All this work and the worry about Sophia, it was getting to me. I even went to the doctor about it, told him I was feeling a bit off, a bit foggy. He said it was probably just stress and suggested I try to relax more. Relax. When was the last time I'd truly relaxed? Did you have any sense looking back that something was coming? Honestly, no. Not even a little bit. I just figured I was getting older. My body was starting to play tricks on me. The physical stuff, the clumsiness, the faint music in my head, I chalked it all up to the wear and tear of 6 decades plus. My mind was so focused on the next brushstroke, the next repair, the next email from the conservator about a client's deadline. I was so busy trying to keep everything else perfect. I didn't notice the tiny imperfections creeping into my own machinery. It's funny, isn't it? You spend your life trying to fix things, and sometimes you miss the warning signs that you yourself need a bit of maintenance. I just kept telling myself, you're fine, Izzy, just tired. It's incredible, really, how good we are at convincing ourselves that everything is normal, even when it's anything but. I was so busy looking for flaws in the wood, in the paint, in the metal. I didn't see the hairline fracture in my own life starting to spread. I was so focused on the external details, the tangible, the visible, that I completely missed the internal shift. It was like standing in a room full of shadows, but only looking for the light switch. I was blind to the subtle hints, the quiet murmurs of my own mortality. And that, I suppose, is the ultimate imperfection, isn't it? To be so preoccupied with the world around you that you forget to listen to the world within. I remember the morning clearly. October 26th, 2021, Tuesday. The operating room at St. Jude's. It was sterile, obviously. That sharp, clean smell of antiseptic. They were prepping me for this minor thing, this procedure to check on something they'd found on a scan. I was lying there, the bright surgical lights glaring down, not uncomfortably, just there. I remember the hum of the machines, a low, constant drone that you barely notice until it's pointed out. The scrub nurse was tying off her gloves, a crisp, papery sound. The anesthesiologist, a young man with kind eyes, was talking to me, his voice soft, explaining what was happening. I was watching the ceiling tiles, just counting them, I guess, trying to stay calm, you know. It was all so ordinary. And then it wasn't. It started subtly, a strange pressure in my chest. Not pain, exactly, more like a heavy blanket being thrown over me. Then it tightened, like a vice. Suddenly, the humming of the machines seemed to amplify, and I could feel my own heartbeat, which had been steady a moment before, start to falter. It felt like a bird trapped in my ribs, fluttering frantically, its wings beating against bone, but weakly. It wasn't strong anymore. The anesthesiologist's voice became a little sharper, more urgent. I saw him look at a monitor. The scrub nurse froze, her hands midair. And that's when I knew. There was no real thought process, no fear, just a profound, quiet certainty that settled over me like the heaviest snow. This is it. The room seemed to go a little fuzzy around the edges, like a photograph that's lost its focus. The sound started to recede, the humming of the machines and the hushed voices fading, replaced by a growing silence. And with that silence came a warmth. It wasn't the physical warmth of the room, but something internal, something that spread from the center of my being outwards, dissolving the tightness in my chest. It was like being submerged in warm honey. The last thing I remember before the silence became absolute was the feeling of my heart giving one last feeble flutter, and then nothing. Just this overwhelming sense of peace, complete, utter peace. It was like all the tension I'd been carrying my whole life just evaporated. Later, when I was back, they told me it was about 4 minutes and 15 seconds. 4 minutes and 15 seconds where my heart had stopped. 4 minutes and 15 seconds of clinical death. The paramedic, a woman this time, her voice was calm and steady when she was filling out the report, said something about my vitals being flatlined, then suddenly kicking back in like I'd just been holding my breath for 4 minutes. It sounds impossible, doesn't it? But in that moment, when I was gone, it just felt like a breath, a very, very long breath. And then I was back, and the world was different. The silence I'd experienced wasn't a void, it was a presence. And the warmth, it was something I carried with me. I still do sometimes. And then it wasn't just silence anymore. It was like, imagine being inside a seashell, but instead of the ocean roar, there was this incredible, resonant quiet. But it wasn't an empty quiet. It felt full, like the moment before a conductor lifts his baton, that hushed anticipation. And the warmth, it was like being dipped in warm honey, like you said. But it wasn't just on my skin. It was in my bones. It seeped into every cell, every atom. It felt like home. But I'm trying to explain it with earthly words. And that's where I stumble, because that's the thing, isn't it? These words we use, they're built for this world, for gravity and sharp edges and the cold of winter. They just don't quite fit what I experienced. It wasn't like falling or floating. It was more like being released, like a tightly wound spring finally uncoiling. Imagine holding your breath for your entire life, holding it so tight you didn't even realize you were doing it, and then suddenly you just let go. And it wasn't just the tension in my chest that dissolved. It was every worry, every regret, every bit of stubbornness I'd ever clung to. It all just melted away. And then I was somewhere. It wasn't a place with walls or a ceiling. It was more like a feeling, a memory made manifest. The dominant colors were this impossible sapphire blue, so deep and vibrant it made my eyes ache, but in a good way, like seeing the ocean for the first time. And then there was this shimmering gold, not like sunlight, but like liquid light, weaving and swirling through the blue. The light itself, it didn't just illuminate, it was the illumination. It felt like warm honey cascading over my skin, but it was the light that was doing it. And there was this music, this delicate, ethereal music box melody playing from everywhere and nowhere at once. It was so fragile, so pure, it felt like it was made of spun moonlight. And the temperature, it wasn't hot or cold, it was just perfect. Like the exact temperature you'd want on the most perfect day you could ever imagine, amplified by 1,000. It was pure, blissful comfort. And with all of that, with the colors and the music and the light, came an emotion. It was the biggest one. It was complete, utter acceptance. Like every single thing about me, every mistake, every flaw, every single thing I'd ever regretted was not just forgiven, but loved. It was a love that was so vast, so unconditional, it felt like it was breathing me. And then in the midst of this unbelievable peace, this sapphire blue and gold space, I felt a presence. It wasn't a physical body, not like you or me. It was more like a consciousness, a knowing. And it felt like coming home after being lost for a very, very long time. And suddenly, I knew who it was. It was my mother, my mama, She'd been gone for 20 years, but it wasn't her face I recognized. It was a feeling, a specific way she used to hum when she was happy, a little off-key, a little breathy. I heard that hum, not with my ears, but in my very being. And a gesture, her hands when she was telling me a story, she'd cup them slightly, as if holding something precious. I felt that cupped hand gesture, that warmth in her palms, a memory so vivid it was like it happened yesterday. And then, the message. It wasn't spoken words, not like this. It was more like a knowing that flooded me. It was a single, clear thought imprinted on my consciousness, and it was about Sophia, my daughter. All these years, the bitterness, the estrangement, and the message was, Sophia remembers the day you taught her to ride her bike. She remembers the scraped knees and your gentle hands, not the argument at Thanksgiving. It was so simple, so profound. I'd been so consumed by my own perceived slights, by the last thing we'd said, that I'd forgotten all the first things. The scraped knees, the laughter, the feeling of her small hand in mine. And in that moment, it all made sense. The anger, the pride that had kept us apart for so long, it just seemed so small, so insignificant compared to the love that was the very fabric of this place. I understood then that the hurt I'd inflicted wasn't just on her, but on myself. And I saw, not like a movie, but like a clear, objective understanding, a small moment from my own life. It was me at a family picnic years ago. Sophia, maybe 7 or 8, was showing me a drawing she'd made, and I was distracted, talking to someone else, and I just sort of nodded and said, "That's nice, honey." And I saw myself from her perspective in that moment, the slump of her shoulders, the way she'd quietly tucked the drawing away. It was a tiny thing, but it was a perfect illustration of how my own busyness, my own self-absorption had created these invisible wounds. And then a gentle nudge, a sense of being guided, not pushed back. A whisper, like the music box melody, suggesting it was time. It wasn't a rejection, more of a return. The warmth began to recede slowly, like a tide going out. The sapphire blue and gold began to dim, not vanish, but soften. And I felt that familiar, heavy blanket start to settle back over me. But this time it wasn't suffocating. It was just a reminder of where I belonged. And the last echo I carried back with me, besides the warmth and the music, was that profound sense of acceptance. It was the anchor, the thing that allowed me to face everything that came after. Does that make sense? It's hard to put into words, I know, but that's what happened. It wasn't like a gentle wave washing me ashore. It was more like being violently spat out, like a watermelon seed from a determined kid. This feeling of being anchored there, in that impossible blue and gold, with that perfect warmth, it was so profound. And then this pull. It was like a cosmic bungee cord snapping, yanking me back with a force that made my non-existent bones ache. There was this instantaneous, gut-wrenching realization I didn't want to go back. Not to the sterile white room, not to the confusion, not to the things I'd left behind that suddenly felt so much more important than the things I'd been holding on to. And then the body. Oh, God, the body. It was like being shoved back into a suit of rusty armor. It was heavy, so incredibly, crushingly heavy and cold. A bone-deep, seeping cold that was the absolute antithesis of that perfect warmth. Every single nerve ending screamed. It was like being plugged into a faulty electrical grid. The sound, it was an assault. The beeping of machines, tinny and insistent, like tiny, angry metal insects. The muffled voices of people, distorted and distant, like they were shouting through a thick wall of cotton. My eyes snapped open, but it wasn't a gentle awakening. It was like someone flipped a switch on a blinding searchlight. Everything was too bright, too white, too real. The sheets were rough against my skin, scratchy. The air tasted metallic, and then I heard it. A voice. A clear, panicked voice cutting through the cacophony. "She's back! She's back, doctor! Her pressure's stabilizing!" And then a face, blurred at first, like looking through a dirty window. But as it came into focus, it was familiar. Younger, maybe, stressed. But it was Dr. Evans, my surgeon. And then another face, the scrub nurse. Her eyes were wide, her lips moving, but the words were lost in the din. "Izzy, can you hear me? Izzy, squeeze my hand if you can hear me." Squeeze her hand. Squeeze. This heavy, leaden appendage. I tried. Oh, how I tried. It felt like trying to lift a mountain with a toothpick. But some small, involuntary twitch, some last flicker of will, must have happened because I felt a pressure. a faint, almost imperceptible pressure. She squeezed. Oh, thank God, she squeezed. And then it hit me, the separation, the stark, jarring difference between there and here. Back there, everything was connected, flowing, part of a vast, loving whole. Here, it was all jagged edges, each person an island, each sound a separate, jarring note. The world felt broken, divided. It was too loud, too bright, too heavy. It was like the universe had turned up the volume on its worst imperfections and dialed down the peace to zero. It was just so much. And I, Izzy Rossi, carousel restorer and stubborn mule, was back in the middle of it, and I had a daughter to call. So, Isabella, after everything, what was the first thing you did when you got home? Home, right? I was in the hospital for, what was it, 5 days? 6? Something like that. Felt like an eternity, honestly. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd get this flash of that blue, that impossible, shimmering blue and the gold. It was like a phantom limb, that feeling. A warmth I couldn't quite recapture. Dr. Evans, bless his persistent heart, and Nurse Henderson, she was a saint, they kept coming in. Asked me how I was feeling. Peachy, I'd say. What else do you say? They'd try to talk about the procedure, the recovery, the miracle. Miracle. Yeah, but all I could think about was the argument. That damn Thanksgiving dinner 5 years ago. Sophia, her face, all tight and hurt. And me, digging my heels in, refusing to see it. Refusing to see her. Sophia herself. She came, dressed to the nines like always. She sat there, so stiff, on the edge of the plastic chair they have by the bed. She brought me lilies. Of course, lilies. Mom, she said, her voice so careful, like she was handling a live wire. Dr. Evans said you were quite ill. I just looked at her, really looked at her. Saw the fine lines around her eyes, the way she held her shoulders, and it all just fell away. The anger, the pride, the years of silence. Sophia, I said, and my voice sounded like it belonged to someone else, a little rusty. Sophia, I'm so sorry. She just blinked. Took her a minute to process. Sorry for what, Mom? She asked, still so cautious. For being a stubborn, foolish woman, I told her. For letting stupid things get in the way. That's when she started to cry. And I just held her hand, and it felt right. For the first time in years, it felt right. People kept asking me about it, you know? After I was out and about, they'd hear the story, the miraculous return from the brink, and they'd ask, so what did you see? What was it like? I tried once to explain, to my neighbor, Mrs. Henderson. I told her about the light, the feeling of everything being okay, about how it all made sense. She just nodded, a little too brightly. Oh, yes, dear, she said, patting my arm. It's very important to have faith. God works in mysterious ways. And I knew right then that she hadn't heard a word. Not really. It was like trying to describe color to someone who'd only ever seen in black and white. They just didn't have the framework for it. So I stopped trying, mostly. Here's the thing, though. It's the little things. The watches. My favorite gold watch, the one my husband gave me for our anniversary, stopped the day I got out of the hospital. Just dead. I figured, old watch, needs a battery. Took it to the jeweler. He replaced the battery. Worked for a day, then nothing. So I tried another, a nice solid silver one. Same thing. It's like my wrist is a Bermuda Triangle for timepieces. They just cease to function. It's not a big deal, you know? I use my phone, but it's a constant, quiet reminder. A little whisper from there. I still restore carousels. It's in my blood, I guess. But now, I don't get so lost in the tiny imperfections. I used to spend hours, days even, on a single flawless brushstroke, trying to make it perfect. Now I look at a chipped paint spot on a wooden horse, and I think about the child who might have scraped it, the laughter that might have echoed around it. I still want it to be beautiful, of course, but the desperate need for absolute flawlessness, that's gone. I'm more forgiving of the carousel, of myself, of the chipped paint. This morning, I was polishing the brass railing on the Neptune carousel. The sun was coming through the big windows of the workshop, making dust motes dance. I stopped just for a second, and I looked at my reflection in the polished brass. And I saw my hands. Not the hands of a woman who'd just come back from the edge, no. Just my hands. A little worn, a little lined, but steady. And I smiled, a quiet, easy smile.